Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. As promised a week or two ago, we are going to dive into the Gibson Q series today. It's a really strange model that there's not a lot of information out there online, so I'm going to try to provide as much as I ever can in one condensed place for you. But I've actually got a few cool stories behind this one. So first off, how I got this guitar, and unfortunately it arrived with the box all ripped open. Hopefully it's okay. But I was on Reverb one night, and I just happened to see this thing get listed. So I made him an offer, and then I ended up getting a message from him saying, "Oh, I love your show. This is actually in at our shop on consignment." So the next day, I think we counter-offered a little bit, and then I just ended up saying, "Yep, I will take it," because I've wanted to talk about the Q series. Because it's one of those guitars that's cool for the time period that it came out in, but then it just looks goofy to us future people. Ah, man. See, that's what happened when that got busted open on the side. This got dinged in shipping, so I can't even open this case. That happens more often than you'd like to believe. I can at least remember having to do this one other time. Thankfully, it's pretty easy to bend back, hopefully. All it takes is one good hit to mash it up. There we go. Perfect. We're already missing one latch. We can't lose a second one. But anyways, here we go. Let's take a look at this monstrosity. Oh yeah, another Gibson Super Strat that's just was too late to the party to ever become famous. This is the Gibson Q-100. So these guitars are technically part of the very end of the Norlin era because that ended in January of 1986. And these things did come out in 85, so it's like one of the last designs out of the Norlin era of Gibson. And I think the Henry J people came in, they're like, these things aren't selling. Let's get rid of them. Let's actually do a real Super Strat. And that's when things like the M3 ended up getting birthed. Gibson's definitely made prettier Super Strats. Like, check out the US one if you want to learn more about pretty much every single one. Or the Gibson M3 video where I go in depth into pretty much all the Gibson Super Strats. But this thing, it's simple. I bet if this would have came out a good 6 years prior, it could have been something new. So they're just kind of a unique time period piece. They're not super expensive, they're not ultra desirable or anything like that, but so far I think these things have just gotten a bad rep. This thing feels great, and it's got that vintage smell to it too. I'm not sure if this is the original trem bar on it or not, but hey, at least we have something. Sometimes it's called the Alpha series as well. They went through many different name changes, so let's go ahead and talk through the Q series. So this was actually a multi-guitar and bass series, starting with this one, the Q100. Basically what this series did is it took the Gibson Victory body style. Like, you can check out these reviews and demos, the MVX, the MV2. There were also Victory basses. Now that I've had one in my hands, they've shrunken it down just a hair. It feels like they've changed the body wood material because those things were maple and chunky. This thing is actually surprisingly lightweight. I already like it better than the Victories that I've had. But then they gave them funky pickup arrangements. So starting with this one, this is the Q100. What makes this one special is it just has one pickup. It's supposed to be a Dirty Fingers, and you just get a master volume on here. There's no tone control or anything like that. And just looking at this, it does appear that we still have the original one. There were ones that had the Kaler version, like this one that has the flyer trem on it. And I've heard rumors that there's a stop bar variety. Maybe it's just a wrap tail, I'm not sure. I could not find a single photo of that, so we'll just say maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't, because there's just not a lot of information out there or photos of these things in general. But then there was also the Q200 series. So like the Q100, it was also birthed from 1985 until 1986, but in late 85, the rest of the series got a revamp. It was later renamed the Q2000. It also had a Dirty Finger in the bridge pickup, but it also had a neck P90 pickup. I think that's one of the earliest times that Gibson utilized a P90 humbucker combination. It's something a lot of people did to like their Les Paul Deluxes. They would swap out that neck mini humbucker for a P90, then route out that bridge. Later on used in like the Gibson BFG series. So from there was also the Q300, later renamed the Q3000. That's the one I personally wanted to review because it's the coolest. It's got triple P90s. Who wouldn't want that? I love triple P90 guitars. They're cool and they're not done enough. Then you could also find the Q400/Q4000. That lasted a year later than the other ones. It went from 85 to 87. It had a Dirty Fingers in the bridge, but 2 single coils. So the reason why that one lasted longer, it was more of a traditional Super Strat HSS setup. And then, as I alluded to earlier, there was a bass series, the Q80 and the Q90. Now, I actually have a very personal story with the Q80 and 90 basses. So, one of my very first vintage Gibson finds in my local community, at the time, I didn't know it. It was a Q80 bass, and I was able to pick it up on Facebook Marketplace for a staggering $400. It was like this Ferrari red finish. The pickup didn't work because the battery had exploded in it. I ended up buying some EMGs for it. Had to do a little bit of additional routing to get it in there. It was just my Gibson bass. I thought it was cool. I didn't even know Gibson made basses at that time. So like 16-year-old little Trogly here was just so excited when he went to work that day. I was just happy, smiling. I had like the manager on duty be like, well, what are you so happy about? I bought a Gibson for $400. Like at that time, I thought it was probably worth thousands and thousands. And my mom was helping me look up what date it might be. It ended up being a 1987. The truss rod was maxed out. The neck was extremely bowed. Later on, found out it was stolen back in the mid-90s. I ended up getting it back to its original owner. It was quite the tale, but yeah, that was a dog of a bass. But I'm happy that even though it's only a wall hanger, it's back to the original owner. His buddy actually stole it out of his truck a long time ago, so I was able to help him solve that mystery. But anyways, those things look like this, stock in original format. I don't know if I ever made a video on that particular one, but I did get a Q90 bass later on. Basically, the only differences were the other types of pickups. Also within Gibson's Back to Basics series, there was also a Gibson 4 and a Gibson 5. They had the same body style, but one was a 4-string, one was a 5-string. Kind of cool. And then the elusive Ned Steinberger 2020 bass. We'll just save that for a future review and demo. I love that little iceberg. So as far as finishes for all these, you can find them in the ebony finish, pretty much in all variations. Some of them came in Panther Pink, like this Q100 you can see on the screen. You can find a white finish that likely has aged to an off-white by this time. And of course, the striking Ferrari red finish. And I'm sure there's custom orders and weird stuff too. But as I said, finding photos of these things has been a little bit difficult. Alright, now some deep facts that most people don't know about the Gibson Q series. At one point in time, Eddie Van Halen might have actually been approached to endorse this lineup of guitars. I had a viewer of the show send me a photo of what was proposed to be the original prototype. The body on this one was a Q200 series. It had the P90 in the neck and the humbucker in the bridge. However, what made his special was the truss rod cover. It was labeled EVH Special. Now, unfortunately, he was with other guitar manufacturers at this time, so he declined this partnership request. But he did sign the inside of the backplate, "Take Care, Eddie Van Halen, 2585. And this particular guitar was marked a Gibson prototype. My only problem with this story is the serial number on this guitar actually post-dates his signature on the backplate. So it's possible that this story was made up, but just holding this thing in my hands, it definitely gives you Eddie Van Halen vibes, so I don't doubt this at all. But the serial number on this prototype actually dates a few months after the one we're reviewing today. So that's what makes me believe, okay, was this an Eddie Van Halen prototype guitar? And while we're talking about prototypes, there were a handful of these that also got star inlays, just like you see here. This is one of the only factory blue ones that I've ever seen as well. It's one of the more decked out Q4000 series guitars, and hey look, Gibson Mother of Pearl logo. That looks sweet on this model. Though I can't say I quite dig the stars. So first impressions, I mean, looking at this is one of the nicest feeling Super Strats that I've ever felt by Gibson. Like, I was fully expecting this guitar to just suck. Because these don't get a lot of love. People ask like $3,000 sometimes for these, but generally they sell in that like $1,000 to $2,000 range, depending on condition, originality, finish, things like that. But this, the weight is so impressive on this. I'm loving this thing already. What I really want to do to this thing is give it an Eddie Van Halen stripe job, because it almost looks and feels like that. I really dig the unbound meat cleaver headstock, sometimes known as the hockey stick, whatever you want to call it. This ebony fretboard is looking great. We've got real mother of pearl inlays on there. And the body's got like this almost a perpetual curve to it. Like, it is flat, but it doesn't feel like that because of this comfort cut right here. It almost looks like the whole guitar is like UFO shaped. Check out the Roswell Rhodes guitar for that. It kind of reminds me some of that. So I'm just excited to check out something that I've known about but never necessarily had. But the last topic before we throw this on the workbench is a lot of these will get custom shop original decals or custom shop edition. Typically, custom shop original means this was a one-off custom order. In this case, no. I don't know why it has it. I really just do not. Because there's nothing custom ordered about this unless it's like one of the small specs change, like somebody wanted a mahogany neck instead of a maple neck, or an alder body instead of mahogany or maple. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it came down to this one had a Kaler. Or it could just be a dealer custom ordered this because, hey, it's a new one for the shop. They just wanted to get one in for themselves. Other times, as I was saying, custom shop edition usually means a limited edition run. There weren't a lot of these things made, so that's just one of those things that's kind of lost to time. But hopefully we can dig up some additional information on these things today. All right, troglodytes, let's go ahead and throw this Gibson Super Strat onto the workbench and take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside the elusive Q100 guitar, let's go ahead and take a look at this. So thankfully, we do have the original pickup in here. I could tell you that right away due to the double row of pole pieces here. That's how you know it's a Gibson Dirty Fingers. I mean, there's other manufacturers that make pickups like that too, so it could have been swapped out, but you can even see your Tim Shaw style date codes on here. They're kind of marked off, but there's 6 ink stamped numbers on here. It looks like it dates to 85 that you can just barely see. But I like the way that this base plate has aged like this yellow golden hue. That's kind of cool. This should be an extremely hot pickup. We're talking like 16K ohms. And yes, that does appear to be correct on my meter, 15.82. But it is important to note that this guitar does not have a coil split. I think some of the Q series might have it in the higher end series, but this was a point in time where sometimes Dirty Fingers would have a dual lead and then you could do the split. I'm honestly very flabbergasted that they didn't do that for this series, because you've only got one pickup. It'd be nice if they could give you some additional tones out of this thing, but no, straight up humbucker. I love demoing one pickup guitars because I don't have to focus on showing you all the different tonalities. Heck, I can't even demo the tone on this. It's just a straight up volume knob. It's very clearly Eddie Van Halen influenced here. Just this pickup right here is worth like $250 to $300, maybe a little bit more if you find somebody who really needs it. So that's some decent value just right there. But I was thankful that we could actually see the body wood right here. I don't know what kind of route this is, but they made it. And it was obviously masked off with some tape at one point in time when they were doing the finish process. And I'm pretty confident that's mahogany. I mean, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but the color and wood grain structure definitely looks like mahogany to me. And now we need to take a look at the Kaler. So this is what a Kaler route looks like, and normally I'm not a fan of Kalers, but this Flyer Series one actually feels pretty good to me. You guys remember that Somnium review and demo? It had a modern day Kaler system on it, and this feels very similar to that. It's very fluid, seems nice to use. I mean, I don't know about tuning stability at this point in time, but so far, I don't hate it. I mean, you've got brass roller saddles right here that have definitely aged a bit, especially the D string. But then from there, you can either choose to have the short bar arm or the long bar. I think this is just a replacement arm. Normally they have these giant tips on the end. And then just like a Floyd, you've got your fine tuners down here, as well as a locking nut system that we'll talk about in a minute. And it just reads Kaler Flyer made in USA, and then you can see Kaler on the side and it says made in USA again. They want you to know it's made in USA. But the back side of this is what it looks like. There's no fancy complex spring system in the back of your guitar. It's just right here. And if you're wondering what this wire is, this is the grounding wire. All they do is tuck that right under the end of the screw right there, and they just tighten that down, and that's how they ground it off the bridge. I just thought I'd take it out because, you know, it's not every day you get to see one of those. But if you're wondering why the finish looks a little bit funny right here, it's because this also sits on top of this plastic piece. I don't know if that's just a spacer they put on there to raise it up a little bit more, like maybe not all of them have that, or maybe it's just there so it's not resting directly against the body. But this whole bridge setup just sits right on top of that, and then that sits on the body. So very simple guitar. Not much more to talk about electronically until we get to the back. So now we look at the body itself. I did polish it up, so it's just like a reflective mirror here now, but you've got some nicks and dings. There's some scratches. This was definitely lovingly used over the years, but not abused. Like right here, you can kind of see more of a ding. Like it almost looks like somebody took this pickup out to verify it at one point in time, then they gouged the finish. Wasn't me. I would own up to it if it was me. But then we've got like a large ding right here, some scratches. Just a well-used guitar, not abused. I don't think it saw too much stage time, or if it did, it was just, very light playing. But you get a little bit of a comfort swoop right there. Not too much contouring to the rest of this, but that is indeed a little arm cut right there. This would look really cool in like a cosmic finish. It just gives me that Roswell Rhodes vibe, that curved body. I wish they kind of would have continued that. That'd be kind of cool. But our output jack, strangely enough, is located on the side, like right here. I mean, I feel like it would more naturally fall like down here, Les Paul style, but we'll have to see how that feels to play. So moving on from what I'm presuming to be a mahogany body, I could not tell the neck material on this one. Because this stuff right here, that's just vintage buffing compound. That's not actually the wood exposed. So you could maybe tell by looking in there, but that kind of looks like maple to me because it's a lighter colored wood, but at the same time, it very well could be mahogany. I do not have a set answer for you. But I can tell you without a doubt that is a beautiful ebony board. I love 80s ebony fretboards with the real mother of pearl dot inlays. They're a little bit smaller than regular dots. They just have a very characteristic look to them. Once you've seen them, even if you're not a fan of dots normally, you're going to love these. Generally, I like it better when they have binding, but I mean, this guitar just works without it. It's cool. Let's go ahead and grab our specs. Kind of a wide nut width at 1.72 inches, but then skinny's up 2.08 by the 12. Very comfortable rounded neck profile, I would say. First fret neck depth, 0.81, pretty skinny, but then 0.96 by the 12. Here on the contour gauge, here's your first fret and the 12th fret. So it stays a very consistent rounded C neck shape and just gets bigger as you go up. I would say this is a very comfortable neck profile. I would probably prefer it to be just a tad bigger, but I think this is well suited for people who like the super strats as well as people who don't like the super pencil thin necks. I like the way that the side marker inlays have nicely yellowed over as well. Looks great with this all black guitar. Well, we've got 22 frets on here, pretty much the standard fret wire of the era. They might be a little bit taller, but just by a tad, but I'm really curious about the scale length. Looks like they stuck with the regular Gibson 24 3/4 inches. So when Henry J's team came in, they started to make more 25.5 inch scale lengths. So it's like a super strat for a Gibson lover, I guess you could say. It seems to follow the standard 12 inch radius too. Moving on to the face of the headstock here, you can see your truss rod here in good shape. Doesn't even look like it's ever been adjusted. It's still painted over in black. Normally, the first adjust, that stuff starts to flake off. But this does have a locking nut system on top of having a regular nut. So it just sits on the guitar like this, and then you use an Allen key to tighten it down, to lock them down, or to raise it up. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the Allen key to do that. Like, none of the ones in my multi-tools worked, so I just used my little pliers there to lightly grip it to get them up, to release the string. So that is not a standard hex key, so you might have to buy like a whole hex key set in order to get that. But that just secures to the guitar using these 4 screws right here. So just like a Floyd or anything else, that locks the strings into place after you've initially tuned them up here. And then in theory, you're supposed to go crazy with the dive bombing and it should stay in tune. And if you need to tune it, you get the little fine tuners down here. But due to having that locking nut system, you can't have a full truss rod cover on it, so they just saw it off like that. And then they place it on there. And you've got a beautiful hockey stick headstock here. You know, this would have been really cool with a reverse hockey stick. I don't think they ever did that. If you thought this one was crazy enough. I know they've done reverse Explorers before, but I don't know about this one. And of course, our silkscreen Gibson logo here. That would have been cool if it would have been mother of pearl on this one. But you can see these lines. You might think, oh, are those cracks? Like, I was contemplating it on the back because one of these lines up with the screw. But it doesn't look to be the case. Those are just the headstock wings. So this is one piece of wood, and then they join on this piece of wood and that piece in order to make it, you know, this headstock that's rather large. Instead of wasting all this much wood shaving it down into a neck. And it looks like we've got a couple of nicks and dings around the edges. Alright, if you're curious why I was brave enough to actually take the strings off a trem system, it's because these Kahlers aren't too bad to string back up. It's just like a regular tailpiece. You don't have to cut the ball ends off of the string like a Floyd Rose. They just line up like that. So I had some confidence today. Now as far as tuning stability, hopefully this one's better. I definitely had to retune and retune and retune before locking those strings down, but I mean that's just basic with new strings. Those old ones were too rusty to demo. So let's go ahead and flip over to the back. We do have quite a large cavity back here, but that's probably because every single one of these utilizes the same back plate, so they just routed them all the same. But here's what it looks like inside. You just have a tiny little pot crammed right up against there where the wires come through. That way you can do your volume swells really easily. It's right by the pickup, but all this rest of the space just isn't used in this model. The other models make use of it. And then you've just got your output jack along the side right here. So what would be really fun if you got one of these for a really good deal, because they're not all that desirable, you could you could have fun with all that space. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, you could put like a pedal in here and then, you know, have like a distortion built in, have a delay built in, whatever you use so often, because you just have to route a few things so you can adjust it. And you clearly have all that space on the front right here. That wouldn't be hard to do. Man, you could almost get away with one of those Muse touchscreen things in here. I'm not sure how big the electronics are for that, but that would be a lot of fun. But yeah, that's what's in here. At one point in time, I think somebody replaced the screws on these. That's the only thing I could make out, because there's some original screws in the case in the baggie, and that's the only thing that looked out of place. Because I was looking at this guitar thinking, where did those screws come from? Because all we have is the pickup on the front. But it must be the back plate. But the backside of this guitar tells a completely different story. Like, this was actually played a little bit more than maybe we even imagined. Or it's just some guy who really liked his guitar, but he wore a big belt buckle. So there's lots of worming on the back, scratches, but it doesn't look like there's anything like necessarily straight through the finish. Just lots of nicks, dings, and scratches. There's a small area right there that you can see through to the mahogany body where it chipped. But all in all, I would say that's pretty clean. And it is a set neck super strat, so if that's something you're after with the Gibson scale length, then here's the back of the neck. Looks pretty clean, right? That's because I just polished it up. But if you get it in the light just right, you can see quite a few impressions. Nothing that I really noticed while playing, but definitely worth mentioning. As far as the base of the headstock, this is 1985, 105th day of the year, 512th in production. So that means it is a Nashville-made product, and it was the 13th guitar stamped that day, because there is a 500 number. And as I was telling you earlier, you can see those seam lines right there. And this is the one that freaked me out because it lined up with that screw. Nah, that's not a crack. That's just another seam line. And again, this one, custom shop original. Maybe it's because bodywood changed. I don't know. There's not always answers in the 80s. And of course our strap buttons on this one. Stock black? Maybe. I'm not sure on that. That's possible those were changed. But you got one in that horn, which is not the best location, and then one down here. But I keep calling this thing pretty light. Let's see how light that is. A little over 7 pounds. 7 pounds, 1.2 ounces. The body's really light. The neck doesn't seem divey. I'll have to find out when I put it on the strap. But after my experience with the Victory series, I was fully expecting it to be like, what, 9, 10 pounds? So that was a pleasant surprise. So let's go ahead and plug it in. Have some fun with it. It's one pickup, no tone. Let's just get to it. Have you ever picked up a guitar and just knew right away that this was going to be a good one? Like, this is the phenomenon I'm having with this guitar right now, because it It feels so good, just the way that it rests against my body. It's not neck heavy. It's a really sleek black finish everywhere. Simple, no-nonsense guitar. I knew this thing would be great. Despite, when I bought it, I had no expectations at all for this thing. I thought it was just a weird Norland era oddity. But now I'm starting to think, was this thing overlooked? Okay, let's go ahead and run through the tones here. I mean, we've only got one pickup, so not a lot for me to talk about today. Is really microphonic. I'm talking through my amp right now, and I'm not even that close to the pickup.
But if we get closer, we can do the get out of my yard. Get out of my yard.
Now that we know all about the Gibson Q series, what are my final thoughts on this thing? I was not expecting anything out of this guitar. I just wanted to buy it so I could say, yep, I've documented the Q series. When somebody sends me a link to one of these things and goes, what is that? It's much easier to send them a link than type out the whole history. That way, everybody can be learned on this model. But I've got to say, absolutely blown away. Now, this would be a heck of a lot better if I had the actual sized Allen key with me today so I could lock this bridge down and, play more with the trem system. But I really liked it. I knew as soon as I took it out of the case, there was something special about this one. The weight was just right. I didn't even have to strum it. I just knew I would like this thing. The neck, it's got a great profile to it. I would prefer just a tad bigger, but it's got a good girth to it, but yet at the same time, it's still slim, but it definitely chunks up in this upper fret registers, which, I don't know, maybe super strat guys wouldn't like that, but I really had a good time with this guitar. So I would heavily suggest checking out the Q series guitars. I thought this might be my only one, but after liking this as much as I did, maybe I still will pick out one of the triple P90 versions of these, because they are pretty cool. This is one of those guitars where I think it's worth more as just a great player than the market says it's actually worth at this time. Like, generally these things, $800 to $1,500 depending on condition and originality. But in my eyes, it's really not worth letting go for that much. This thing inspires you. Maybe it's just because I've had experience with the Q80 bass before, but I don't know. I just like it. It's cool. So troglodytes, I hope you have a new respect for this model today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care. As always, if you're interested in being the next owner of one of these demo guitars, you can check them out on my website, troglysguitarshow.com. There's some links in the description.